Welcome to another episode of the Eric Crocker Show. I'm your host, former NFL and AFL defensive back. And on today's show, the second of today's show, because we had one a little bit earlier, I got Coach Dezi coming on, and we're going to talk about Nick Bosa, him holding out, why it concerns her for a couple reasons. One, she picked the 49ers defensive fantasy league. All right, but two, like there are some injury concerns, at least that I have. So I have questions, and there is nobody better to have on to discuss this than Coach Dezi. Appreciate everybody that's tuned in so far this morning. Make sure that y'all
like and subscribe this video.
yeah. Of course, this show is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, and you see it right there, man. Go to underdogfantasy.com or download the Underdog Fantasy app. Use promo code Crocky, and they will double your deposit up to $100. I was actually just looking at the odds because I have a recording coming up soon with my guy Sosa Picks, and the Brock Purdy line. Dude, we're talking about 5.5 rushing yards. Look at that. 5.5 rushing yards, 212 passing yards. Like, I actually kind of like all these numbers, even the interception. All right. You got Christian McCaffrey right there. Can he get 61 rushing yards or more against the Pittsburgh Steelers? So a lot of really good odds, I think, for the 49ers. You can get all those at Underdog Fantasy. Again, download the app or go to underdogfantasy.com. Usually I have the link in the description below. Right now, as I'm recording, it's not there, but eventually I'll get it there. All right. But forget all that, man. It's been a while, and I've like, all right, I'm situated. Everything, I'm good to go. Things are structured, and there's no better time now to bring on Coach Dezi. Coach Dezi, good morning. How you doing?
Hey, woohoo!
Woo, we got to play like air horns or something, or we got the applause. We have the air horns because we have Coach Dezi on here. So I know the celebration. I know everybody in the chat. They're gonna be like, "Oh, what? Coach Dezi's back on. Let's go!" Yeah.
Yes. Welcome.
So what do you have going on? You have something that I think some people need to hear about.
Yeah. So we've been in chats about this before, but you lit a fire under my butt. I think I like the podcast thing. I love Niners Nation. I love connecting with fans. So I kind of went a route similar, and I have Girlfriends in Football, and it's a podcast where us ladies can chat all things football. Of course, I'm representing Niner Nation and the faithful. So I also have a friend, Beth, who's a Bills Mafia girl, and I have Bucks Nation represented by my girlfriend, Sherry, but we speak all things football. Often conversations go left, as us ladies often can get a little interesting in conversation, but check it out if you guys are interested. We stream Wednesday evenings at 8:00.
Oh, heck yeah. So that's tonight.
That's tonight. Yep.
All right, so you'll have to send me the link, and I'll put it in the description below so people can, as they're watching this, they know exactly where they can find you.
Yes, that'd be great. That'd be great.
Awesome stuff. All right, so I reached out to you, and I did want to talk about Nick Bosa because the one thing that has concerned me with all of this, and I'm like, maybe I'm way off. Maybe it's not an issue, but holdouts, guys that are holding out, I feel like there was a time where obviously we'd see a lot more, and you'd see all these kind of just random injuries from guys, these like hamstrings or soft tissue injuries, things like that. And I'm like, is there a direct correlation between those injuries and the holdouts? I did have a recording that I did last night. We premiered it earlier this morning, but it was my guy Jasper and Josh. And Jasper just thinks kind of like, just injuries kind of happen. So he's not too worried about Nick Bosa and how ready he'll be for the season. But I don't know. I feel like there's something to kind of ramping up, getting your body ready. Even if you're not playing necessarily in a preseason game, but just like the way that they're practicing. But you have some stats, whether it's from the COVID year and some other things that might either say, nope, Crock, you're tripping, or there actually might be something there. So what worries you the most when Nick Bosa is holding out?
My fantasy football team.
Of course that.
I mean, my mom is it's an all girls fantasy football league. My mom's in there. She's a big 49er fan. She took a lot of the players I wanted from our team. So I had to get the 49er defense from her. But no, in terms of what you're saying, I agree. I think there is concern there. There is a system in place, the way that they even prep guys heading into the season is methodical. There is a reason for it. And just before we got on, Croc, I was asking you about OTAs and kind of what does that look like from a training perspective, and the reason why you don't just show up and just start banging heads and banging helmets and doing high impact activities. There's a process, and that process is to get the body primed and ready for the NFL season. And so if you don't have that, I don't care what kind of shape you're in. Yeah, you might do better than someone who's not in as much shape as you, but overall you're still at risk. And there is some statistics, some data out there. I know if you've listened to me before when I've been on with Eric, is the 2020 season. If we've learned anything, we've learned a lot from that season. There was we didn't have preseason at all. And what happened in September, we had a high influx of injuries. I think I even talked about this when we traded for McCaffrey, because he was a victim of that season. So I'm just going to give you some information here. There's some of these articles that I shared with Crock. I sent him the links for, maybe he wants to post those so that you guys can see that. But in this article, they're comparing the 2018-2019 regular NFL season to the 2020-2021 season, which of course did not have a preseason. And overall, and I won't share a bunch of numbers with you, but there was a significantly higher incidence of soft tissue injuries compared to that 2018-2019 season because of not having a preseason. So this is just across the entire NFL, all different athletes, had a substantial increase in injuries. So there is concern. I don't know, who would default that, but or fault that. That would there's concern. I'm concerned.
I think a lot of people, when they look at Nick Bosa, and me too, he's somebody that you typically don't have to worry about, right? Like when he shows up for training camp, he's going to be in shape. I think those Bosas, it feels like they're kind of created in a lab, and they go out there in Florida. They kind of seclude themselves from everyone else. You really don't hear about him at all. But when he shows up, he's ready to go. So they prepare extremely well. I don't know how much at-home preparation can get you ready to just hop into a game. Like, that's different. You can prepare, get ready for OTAs. You can prepare, get ready for training camp. You can eat right. You can take care of your body. You can do everything leading up to that. But I feel like there's something to the kind of ramping up stage of, just pushing against another body. You're fighting with a guy. And when I say fighting, I just mean in the trenches, practicing, going full speed or close to it. And, doing the get off drills where you have the coach that stands on that thing, and then you have the football on that stick. They move the football, then all of a sudden everybody's just flying off the ball and they're hitting that pad, right? Like, those are things where you're starting to push your body, especially when you're competing against someone else. I talked about when I was in college, junior college, and we ran 40-yard dashes, right? I mean, that's so junior college. We ran these 40s. But we actually raced against someone else. Well, that was the fastest 40 I had ever run in my life, even to this day. Even when after that, I kind of prepared for 40-yard dashes to run for my NFL workouts and things like that. I ran well for the Jets. I ran well for the Eagles, did not run well for the Saints. But those times weren't even close to what I ran when I was in junior college and I was running against someone else. You're racing. It just does something else and kind of takes your intensity to another level when you're competing. So even at practice, even if you miss out on training camp, but you're able to practice and you're able to go full speed against another person, I think that really helps. And I know in the COVID year, things were so weird. Guys weren't really able to touch. You can be in meetings. They were trying to, make it as non-contact as possible. They didn't have a preseason. And then we saw, like you said, like just this influx of injuries throughout the entire league. So as it pertains to Nick Bosa, and I saw a comment where someone said, I'm pretty sure Nick Bosa's been working out. I'm pretty sure he's been, well, yeah, of course he's been working out. That's what the Bosas do. But can any of your workouts prepare you to go from 0 to 100? And is that when we typically see the soft tissue injury? So you talked about some of the injuries that happen, and it's clear that there's a direct correlation to that. But when you think about Nick Bosa, is there an increased injury concern when you are as tightly wound as him, because he looks at a guy like that. I mean, he has like I almost say zero body fat, because that's impossible, and he'd probably be dead. But as low of a body fat percentage that you can have at 6'3", 265 pounds, 270 pounds, like he has it. Are you more susceptible to the injuries or soft tissue injuries when you are kind of built that way, as opposed to maybe someone who isn't as tightly wound?
I mean, even Superman has kryptonite, right? Like there's always something that can falter when, especially when you're in a situation where there's unaccounted for variables, right? These variables that you can't predict when you're in action play, right? If you're just training, those are kind of monitored, measured variables that can be controlled. But when you're in play, when you're in action, there is no, there's variables that you don't account for. And that's where your body has to get used to those movements, these odd positions that you can get put in, and weird ways that you're pushing off on somebody that you're just not going to get in a training situation. Training is meant for strength and flexibility, and it's just kind of more of like in a lab, right? But then when you get it out into the field, it's like a battlefield, right? Like the military trains for action, but then they get in action, they get injured, all these things happen because you can't always predict what's going to happen. It's the unpredicted variables that matter. And that's why we talked about, I asked you about OTAs and how the players are prepared for the season. It's methodical. There is a reason for it, because they know if they do too much too soon, injuries can happen. And because of that, I actually found an article, National Library of Medicine. There's an article that says, does overexertion correlate with increased injury? And they were looking at the relationship between player workload and soft tissue injuries, specifically in football. And so what they did is they put these wearable things on these athletes, the GPS tracking, the triaxial accelerometry, I mean, very sophisticated equipment to track and see what their workload was like. And basically they were able to use over 100 different athletes and look at their workload. And they noticed that if the workload was increased too quickly, soft tissue injuries happen. So, it's there. And they were even able to identify how much of an increased workload was too much. So they saw injured players with an increased workload, as much as 73% increase, They would get injured. And so that is a problem. And so because they know that the workload can't be too great too soon, or else these injuries happen, that is the methodical reason for the way that they prepare these athletes for the regular season.
Wow. So I have Rod J in the chat. He says, what was your time, Crock? He's kind of alluding to my 40-yard dash time. All right. So at Modesto Junior College, I ran a 4.46 when I was competing against someone else. I had never in my life ran a time that fast at any point in my life, even after I prepared for 40-yard dash. So MJC, racing against someone else to run a 40-yard dash time, 4.46. I did not run a 40 again until what they call it, your junior pro day. So it's like heading into my senior year. I did not prepare for that at all. I actually had a broken jaw and was running with my mouth wired shut. If I would have known that time would stick with me forever, I would not have ran. But I had a broken jaw. I broke my jaw heading into with spring ball, returning punts. I was not supposed to be live. My guy DJ Stevens still, I guess he just figured I was live. The coach, I think he did a bad job of explaining it. He was like, all right, this is live. This is live. But I'm not supposed to be live. Just the, getting off the block, running down the field, trying to block the punt. That was all live. Anyways, it hit me. Boom. It broke my jaw into 3 different places. Jaw was wired shut. The junior pro day happened a couple weeks later. My mouth still wired shut. I ran a 40. I ran a 4.81. A 4.81, right? With zero preparation, wasn't working out, wasn't doing anything at that time. It kind of followed me. So every NFL team I worked with wanted me to run a 40-yard dash time. So first I ran for the Saints. I ran a 4.71. That was with no preparation. My agent said, we got to get you to California. You have to train on your 40. So I flew to California, worked on my 40 for 3 days with Coach Sonny at Edison High School. Shout out to Coach Sonny. and amazing track and field coach, speed specialist, all that stuff. In 3 hours worth of workouts, it was 3 days, 1 hour each day, so 3 hours. He got my time from a 4.71 to a 4.56. So I ran a 4.56 for the Eagles, and I ran a 4.52 for the Jets, and it really was all my starts. Like it was just a start. So yeah, you asked what my time was. That's kind of a long way of saying my fastest non-cheating 40-yard dash was a 4.52 that I ran for the Jets. It's all
Dang,
about the start. It's all about the start. All about the start.
that's
So
true.
technical.
And you have a son that runs track, yes?
I do. He runs the 400. Yeah,
All
my son
right.
Juice. I got one son. He's more of a basketball guy. That's D. And I got my other son Juice. He runs track 400. He run 400. He's done some hurdle stuff. He's like 6'1" now, and it's kind of weird. 16 years old. And now he's like the same height as me. It's kind of wild. Uh,
Hurdles is legit, man. That's a tough event.
so Nick Bosa. Let's say Coach Dezi. We hop off of here right now, and we see that Nick Bosa has signed, and he running that practice. Which, as of right now, the report I saw this morning was Nick Bosa was not in the building. He was not in the building to start the day, and this is the official first day of practice for the game week. All right. Let's say he signs later this evening. He has two days to kind of prepare to play in the game on Sunday. Do you think that it would be wise to put him on a snap count, or do you just say, you know what, you've been training, you've been working out, you're ready to go, just go play, do your thing, and whatever happens, happens?
I mean, we're playing Pittsburgh. They've got an incredible defensive line. We kind of need him. I feel like with the money that we're going to be paying this man, he needs to be out there. But, at the same breath, like given the statistics that I just discussed, I mean, there's a high incidence that he could suffer a soft tissue injury. Does that mean that it's going to happen week one? No, I think it's still a gradient. I mean, even if he gets out of this game and does okay, hypothetically speaking, there's still several weeks. I mean, he has had nothing, in terms of game ready action. I would probably back off. Maybe you play him on certain counts or certain snaps and, keep him off. That's kind of how I would do it. Kind of like what we did with Christian McCaffrey when he first came to the team,
Right.
Even though it was in the middle of the season, but you kind of want to protect that investment in my mind. Because, when things get done, that ink dries, it's going to be a lot of money in his pocket. And we've shelled that out. So we need to make sure we protect him from himself.
Right. Well, hopefully everything works out great. Again, we know the Bosa he's going to be prepared to get on the field. How much can you prepare without actually ever kind of pushing yourself to anything close to 100% against another person? He'll do that for the first time whenever he steps on the field. So obviously that can be a little worrisome. I did want to get your thoughts though on the rest of the 49ers, right? Like the Nick Bosa is not the entire team. I know it feels like it right now, but you have an offense that's loaded. You have a defense that has some special players, like guys like Javon Hargraves, who they signed in the free agency. Obviously, Fred Warner, what he is. Got Talanoa Hufanga on the backside. He was first team All-Pro. But I do want to start kind of with the offense. You mentioned Christian McCaffrey. Do you see the 49ers just saying, all right, we're just going to kind of run him into the ground? And we've seen Kyle do that with some guys, especially if he didn't have the most confidence in whoever the backup was. I remember Elijah Mitchell. He had like hurt ribs, hurt knee, broken finger. And Kyle's like, oh, you're going to run the ball 27 times, even though we're up double digits. So do you think Kyle is going to say, we're going to go all in on utilizing Christian McCaffrey, and you're going to be like kind of everything in this offense? The offense is going to be really centered around him?
100%. And I think McCaffrey's going to have a big year. I think not just because of coach, but I think also because Brock Purdy has such confidence in him. I think that's been a big target, a safe target for him. I think it's his security blanket, one of his check downs. Okay, dump it off to McCaffrey. So I think, Kyle is part of it, but I think Brock also has a comfort and a connection with him. So I think he's going to have a big year. I love Debo. Debo's looking slim, right? He's looking like he's ready to go. I'm excited to see what Debo does. A little concerned about, Kittle maybe not being 100% coming into the regular season. And look, that's a guy who's usually, all in, he's like a Jack Russell when it comes to football. Kid's excited to play every game. And, he's already got a groin strain. So soft tissue injury, and that happened during, preseason. So it's not even, just again, talking about Bosa and where he is. But I think Brandon Ayuk, I'd love to see a good year from him too. I think maybe he's going to have a big year. I'm really excited. My only holdup is, I hope Brock can stay healthy through the season. That's my only. All of what I'm saying is contingent upon what Brock can do. But I'm excited in his abilities. It's just a matter of, can we protect him?
I think that's the scariest thing for everybody. Obviously, this show is sponsored by Underdog Fantasy, and I've talked about it with Brock Purdy's numbers. They look very achievable. His season-long numbers is 24 and a half touchdowns on the season, 3,600 yards on the season. And I feel like those are definitely attainable for Brock Purdy. But there's always the caveat of, well, yeah, if he plays every game, like, he'll hit these numbers. And I think we're just so shell-shocked from just the situation with the 49ers at the quarterback position. And we're not just last year where they went through several quarterbacks, but I feel like it's been that way dang near every single year for Kyle Shanahan, where, you are going to play multiple quarterbacks. And if that's the case again, it'll be a little bit more difficult to hit those numbers. But if you're telling me he's playing all 17 games, and I feel like he'll hit those numbers, and obviously the 49ers will be in a much better position for it. Do you have any more thoughts before we get out of here?
Defense. I'm excited to see what Steve Wilkes is going to do. I'm actually kind of wondering how I hope there's no soap opera drama behind the curtain between him and Kyle. I feel like ultimately, I think I've heard you say before too, that, defense is really up to Kyle, and Steve Wilkes is there to just make sure it's executed. But I feel like the defensive line is starting to get a little bit more stout. I love that. I love defenses. So, I'm excited to see Dre Greenlaw get back in there, Fred Warner. It'd be interesting to see what happens in the secondary with, Hufanga is just not coming back off of not his injuries. So it'll be interesting to see. Again, we're missing an edge rusher right now, a very important one. But otherwise, I'm really excited about looking at that defensive line and seeing how that's going to act out, especially against the run and the pass now with Javon Hargraves.
All right, then one more thing. Do you have a prediction for this game?
I haven't gotten that far. I feel like, don't hate what I'm about to say now, guys. I feel like we have success when we don't win the first game. I won't be upset if that happens, because I do think Pittsburgh has a lot going on. I think they're just getting into a situation of really coming together. I love what they're doing in Pittsburgh. It's going to be a good fight. I feel like it's winnable for us. But again, if it's not, we've gone to Super Bowls not winning the first game of the season. So I think it's going to be, I'll put it out there, maybe 21. Oh gosh, our kicker. That's my heartburn. Yeah. When I think about our team, it's the kicker. And so I don't know, 17-21.
17-21. Well, that would be the under. If you're a betting person, that would be the under. But I like that score for the 49ers. We do have a couple questions here for you. All right. Why does Kittle always seem to get abductor injuries?
Great question. It seems to happen during preseason, right? Am I wrong in that? I don't remember him really going out with that in a regular season. Once you have a soft tissue injury, you're susceptible to a repeat injury. So maybe he had one good one where he had maybe some partial tears in there. It fills in with scar tissue. And scar tissue isn't as malleable as the regular tissue there. So, it doesn't lend itself to being more flexible. So you re-tear in that injury. So I think that's probably it. Otherwise, it would take me understanding what he's doing at the time to understand why it's happening. Is there a movement pattern that he's getting into that, could be trained out of? I don't know. But once you injure, it's higher risk for injury. Ooh.
And here's another question. What is Baker's cyst?
So a Baker cyst is where you get what's called an effusion in the knee. And so anytime there's air quote inflammation, you can create swelling. That swelling then can push out the back of the knee and create like a little cyst that appears in the back of the knee. So really it's just fluid that's in the knee that's kind of pushing to the back part of the knee.
Gotcha. All right. See, that's why we got you on here, man. That was great insight there because I have no idea what the hell Baker's cyst is, and I don't know how abductors get hurt and all that type of stuff. But Coach Dezi does, man. So, Coach Dezi, I appreciate you for coming on. Real quick before we get out of here, let everyone know where they can find you tonight at 8 Eastern time.
Yes, YouTube channel, Girlfriends in Football, and we'll be there chatting about the upcoming games this weekend. Woohoo!
Ooh, all right, and I'll be there too. And hopefully I get to see y'all there. I will be not just at the game, but I'll be at the 49ers Gold Rush party with my guy John Chapman. So make sure y'all get y'all tickets to that. It's gonna be a party, it's gonna be fun. We're gonna be, eating good food, having a couple of drinks, whatever, responsibly, of course. But I'll see y'all then. And Coach Dezi, I'll see you here next Wednesday.
Sounds good.
All right. Appreciate everybody tuning into the chat. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. Tune in. I'm out. Peace. I think it's stopping.